So in this world of lots of communication options in terms of texting and phone, email, Facebook, etc., there's a lot of different ways to connect with other people, but it all boils down to one thing. When people are communicating with each other, they're basically, sharing or looking for some kind of information. They're either sharing something that comes from within, or they're looking to find out something from the other person. And the way I look at it, with all of this interconnectedness that we have going on around the planet, the whole world is like a big brain, and there's all these different neural connections. There's every person represents a different neuron of the kind of global mind, and that any attempt to communicate with another person is like a synaptic connection, a neural connection between those different people. And so if it is firing properly, that's a sign of a healthy mind. That's a sign of a healthy brain, is connections, being able to have access to all aspects of it and be able to connect in different directions and so forth. And on a more local level, your community, combination of people that you know in your life, personally or through work or whatever, it's your chosen neural connection. And there are a lot, because of the web, there are a lot new people coming and going all the time. And so I believe that our community is a lot more fluid than it used to be when our different forms of communication were limited. And so now I think we have to adapt to this new way of communicating. And one of the things that I think is lost in this realm of all these different interconnections is effective communication skills. It's not something that we necessarily learn in school or from family or whatever, and people have very distinct different ways of approaching communication. I find that people fall into one of two categories. One, they understand reciprocity, or two, it's not a concern. And reciprocity is being able to acknowledge a form of communication that comes your way. And avoidance is a big factor these days as well, because there are many ways of hiding through all these different ways of reaching out or being contacted. People can assume you didn't get it, or they get confused. Did you receive my communication? And there's also, in terms of avoidance, the excuse of being busy. Now, I think this is really dangerous in terms of our own ability to create the life that we want, because if we are saying to the universe, I don't want to deal directly with some person or persons, so I'm going to say that I'm busy, the universe hears, oh, being busy serves a purpose. And so you will become more busy and find yourself more stressed because it serves a purpose of avoidance. But dealing with connections directly is helpful, because with all of the new connections that you're going to make, you're not going to have time to constantly accumulate, hundreds or thousands of different connections. And so you have to be clear about where you want to invest energy and be honest about that as well, instead of just avoiding different connections that make you feel uncomfortable or that you've outgrown or whatever. So just being honest with people will help you to create a more spacious life. And when it comes to everyday communication, there are, I've noticed some people that feel that, you send information through the internet, for example, and they receive it, but they don't acknowledge it. And the problem with that is there are probably, millions of different relationships that have been affected by this lack of reciprocity, because there are times that emails don't go through, for example, and it might be only 1 in 200 that has some technical problem, but you could, if you're not having reciprocal interactions with people, you could think that they got this request, or you opened yourself up in some way and they never responded, and so therefore they're not interested in communicating. But in reality could have just been a technical problem. So one way to avoid that in your life and in your network, in your neural network of community, is to acknowledge when you're written. And it could be just thanks or got it or a smiley face or something, simple. Or if it's something that requires a response, say, and you don't have time to get to it and it's been a day or two, say, well, I'm really busy, but I'll be able to get back to you this whenever it is open in your schedule. And then when you have this constant reciprocity of communication, then people will know that if they don't hear back, it's not just bad communication skills, it is a technical problem. In other words, you don't have to wonder if an email didn't go through if the people that you're communicating with and investing with energetically are people who are going to make an effort to get back to you within a couple days, or at least let you know that they're too busy for an immediate reaction or response, and that they'll get back to you soon. And I think a lot of times people will be more likely to achieve excellent communication through their work because their employment and therefore income and therefore security depends upon it. But we have to manage all these many connections that we have in our personal life as well. So I think the best way to handle things is to just try to acknowledge in some way that you've received communication and that you will give a better, either take the time in that moment to respond or let the person know that you will respond more fully at a later time. And if you just have too many connections to really manage in your life, you might have to make some choices about letting some people know that you're not in a place where you because of the number of connections in your life, that you have the ability to nourish that relationship with that person. But if we're going to have a strong neural network, if we're going to add to the effectiveness of our personal community and the global mind as a whole, we have to understand reciprocity and value our communication. Because I think on the level of spirit, there is really nothing more important than communication and other people. It's all that's real. There are a lot of distractions. There's a lot of things that we can do and look at and observe and admire in the world. But communication, I feel, is highly aligned with spirit, because that is how wisdom is transferred, through communication. And I've seen a lot of really poor communication in this contemporary web era, and so that's why I wanted to pass along some ideas that I think that are effective, because I found that making spaciousness and prioritizing communication in my life, then people know if they reach out, if they don't hear back from me within a couple days, it's because I didn't receive contact. Whereas with a lot of people that take weeks to get back to other people and so forth, if your contact with them doesn't come through, you would never know it. There's no way to tell without reciprocity if there was some technical glitch, and the universe can be somewhat of a trickster sometimes. And I've found sometimes important emails and so forth don't go through in relationships that need some kind of prompt from the universe to look at the communication going on in that dynamic. And so it can get really confusing when you're not sure if your contact did not arrive, or if the person feels that it is effective and legitimate communication to wait for several weeks to get back to you. So those are my thoughts on that, and thanks for listening.